What is this thing that humans are always longing for? This thing that humans are constantly anxiously seeking, like an endless waiting in line? It's an interesting philosophical question, and I think there's lots of interesting potential answers. But I just want to sort of talk about something that's been on my heart that I've been contemplating, and I think is worth sharing and getting some feedback on. So, perhaps growth, but I think that's more inevitable than anything, because we're sort of biologically ingrained to keep experiencing and learning and growing, kind of like artificial intelligence is coded to just keep building code on code, keep learning. Sort of our natural sort of instinct for evolution, even if it's not always necessarily seemingly in the right direction. But aside from that, I think it's actually a simple answer to a complex problem. What is this longing that we are trying to constantly satisfy? And we go through all kinds of different means and potions and secret escape routes trying to achieve this thing. And I feel, at least in my current understanding, it's simply inner peace. Inner peace. I can't think of anything more valuable than being able to be okay with yourself, truly in the present moment as it is, as you are. That is a priceless experience. And it's ironic because we're sort of insane when it comes to this, because we want this feeling of peace, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, of relaxation, of being. But it's like we unconsciously write it off for the future. And so we just suffer needlessly, thinking that we're going to attain this peace. But we're never actually going to, because you have to be present in the moment to witness this. And it's actually something independent of how wealthy you are or all these external factors, because it's something you can achieve in the peace, just in the present moment, just by silencing the mind. And that brings me to another thing I really want to briefly talk about, is the mind. In this age of information, this is a psychological age, this is a mental age. We are really pioneers in this time, exploring these frontiers of our inner worlds, of this perception. I think that's why we're having this sort of epidemic of neuroses, of depression and anxiety. It makes perfect sense. Even though the standard of living is getting higher, it's giving us a lot more time and energy to have to deal with ourselves, have to be with ourselves, not having to worry about survival so much, but having to worry about what's going on in here. And so I think it's an indispensable tool to be able to silence your mind by will. And that's something that in our past has been reserved for the monks and the sages and the spiritual people exclusively. But I don't really think that's going to be the case going forward. I think this is something vital that we need to practice. In this age of information, we're being inundated with information from all over, all of this knowledge. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. And knowledge is power. But to have this power, one has to know how to wield it, otherwise it will destroy them. And it's not necessarily so severe now, but I think it's getting a little bit more every day with the compulsive thinking. I am coming to the understanding that compulsive thinking is truly a disease, even though it's a disease we all suffer from one degree or another. And it's kind of just ingrained in our culture at this point to constantly be in this insane world of trying to attain this thing in the future that we have to be present to actually witness and experience this inner peace, this fulfillment. And we're never going to enjoy anything until we can learn how to be present in the moment. This compulsive thinking is truly an epidemic, and it's going to keep accelerating with all of this information, these psychological whirlwinds. To not be able to have any control over what goes on in your mind is a very dangerous path to go down. It's extremely detrimental sometimes, and I think it's going to get more so in the future, because you will start playing some terrible games with yourself and you won't even realize it. Start hearing these negative things, and maybe they're not even always negative, but with the nature of the mind, they usually are. They're usually pretty cynical, and if they're not now, they probably will be at some point when something takes a bad turn and you can't control your thoughts, and now you start getting possessed by your own mind. That is not a game you want to play with yourself, because the mind won't stop thinking, and you want to listen to it, and you want to get involved in it, and now you are sort of absorbed in these mental dialogues and inner chatter and all of this mental talk, and then not only are you possessed by it, and that is kind of your ruler at that point, and not only that, but you identify with it. You actually think it's you. And so when you start going into some wormholes that aren't so positive, you're going to be in chaos if you can't sort of still your mind. It's going to take you away. Your mind is a tool. It's an amazing tool, and it's a companion, and it's a large part of how we filter this reality around us and within us. But if it's your slave master, there's no saying where it might take you. It's really a bad position to put yourself in. This compulsive thinking is truly a disease. I think this is sort of what opens the gateway to lots of neuroses and psychoses, and especially with this epidemic of anxiety and depression, it makes perfect sense why this is happening. And if you've experienced it, you know that there's no bottom to this kind of hell. Your mind can go on these feedback loops, and it can take you for a ride for a long time until something really catastrophic manifests because of it. And so in this time, I sort of just want to put that out there, that inner peace is the present moment. Life is the present moment. It's the same thing. There's never a time when you're living in the past or the future. I mean, you can think about these things, but you're still going to be in the present. And it's not to say that it's bad to go after material success or to think about the past or plan out the future. It's not about that at all. It's just having the ability to be in the present moment. It's so hard. So simple, so hard to do. Yet, this is something that, as we move forward, I truly believe is going to be indispensable, because those who can't control their mind, when this information gets really crazy and their mind starts going into these negative wormholes, it's really hard to get yourself out of these mental worlds when you identify with them as yourself and you actually think you are your mind, and your mind is ruling over you. You are its slave. It's going to take you dark places. This is the root, I believe, of a lot of depression and anxiety. And in my experience, I know my mind recently, it's what got me thinking about this, taking me to dark places, places that I didn't even know I have the capacity to contain in myself, of how much I just didn't want to exist at all. And it's terrifying. And it's sort of taken me some time to step back and actually become aware of this problem, of what it really is. It's this compulsive thinking, these terrible thoughts I've been having that they're it's so scary. I sort of lose my awareness of them being just thoughts, and I actually go into them and they become my reality, and I become very, very scared of everything around me. And that's just one manifestation of the mind being your slave. And then you identify with it and thinking that that's actually yourself. And, oh, how am I so terrible? How is this so awful? If that makes sense. Stepping back and actually realizing it's just my mind, it's very liberating. And that I still have this capacity to come back to the present moment and free myself from this hell in my mind. I truly believe hell is real, and it's a state of mind, and it's bottomless, and there's no limit to the dark places that the mind can take you, and it will take you at some point if you can't control it. And in this time going forward, this is an indispensable tool, because if we can't control the thoughts in our head, we're going to start giving into these thoughts in our head. And that can be suicide, that can be homicide. It has been many times in the past, and many other terrible, terrible ways for this to manifest when you lose control of yourself and your mind starts going on its own. It's truly a terrifying thing to witness, and there's lots of things we still don't understand about the mind, and the mind doesn't have the capacity to understand itself most of the time. And so that's sort of just what I want to talk about. It's just that inner peace and being able to cultivate that stillness in the mind, which truly I believe is what we're actually hoping for. We're trying to get this peace and this stillness, trying to attain it from like a Rube Goldberg machine of like, oh, once I get this job, once I marry this person, once I attain this thing. But that's simply not the case. It might bring you a temporary feeling of satisfaction, but it already has seeds of unhappiness in it, because everything is temporary, everything is change, it's gonna pass. And so it's really important to cultivate this inner peace. It's seriously the greatest thing I can imagine. If you've had to go through a period of time when you could not attain inner peace because of the wreckings of your mind, you know what I mean. And to be able to come back to a place when you do have inner peace, it's truly the best feeling ever. It's truly the most worthwhile thing, more than anything I can think of. And I truly believe in a way this is what we're always actually trying to seek. And it's just such a paradox. It's right under our nose, and we're trying to do all these complicated ways of attaining it without even consciously realizing what we're going for and what's really meaningful. And so not only is that something to do that is meaningful, but truly going forward, this ability to discipline and silence your mind by will is going to be indispensable with all this information we're being inundated by this information. And it's a double-edged sword. It's a great thing. It's solved many problems. But now there's sort of a new problem, which is this compulsive thinking, to constantly be thinking and let your mind take you. It's scary, because I think that's going to be the reason for lots of obstacles in the future. Lots of evil things people are going to be doing, because they are going to lose control of themselves. They're going to lose control of their mind. They're going to let their mind take them on these crazy rides, and they're not going to be aware so much of it anymore. They're going to think that is them. The mind is just a very interesting thing. It's truly a ruthless beast if you let it rule you. You really got to step back and sort of observe it from your own self, because you are not your mind. You are way more than your mind. Your mind is merely a tool for you. Don't let it dominate you. It's a great friend, but a ruthless master. So I hope that was some food for thought. That's just something that's been on my heart recently. Like I said, I was just going through this sort of breakdown with myself, and it was really a hard time, but now that I can sort of see, it was all in my mind the whole time. And even in that time, I couldn't have perceived it, I don't think, because my mind was the influence was so strong on me. I thought it was just hopeless. So I hope that gives you some inspiration or some food for thought. I'd love to hear any feedback on that and your own experiences and opinions on that, because it's a very philosophical idea. But thanks for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.